Do you want to have a million-strong army in France in EU4 before the year 1550? You probably think that's impossible, right? In this guide, I'll show you step by step how to achieve it. I'll start by securing Burgundy even if they initially hate me. I will defeat and exploit the wealth of England and Spain, as well as subjugate the Holy Roman Empire. Yes, all of this is possible thanks to the French missions. So, Iron Man, let's begin! Welcome, imperialists! Lucas here. Yes, France shall be victorious. First, I assign my rivals, England, Castile, and for some reason Austria isn't available. I'll wait for them. I don't set Burgundy as a rival because I want to get closer to them at all costs. Estates. Here's where I'll surprise you. I only take 3 privileges, plus stronger papal diplomacy and cheap money from the burghers, because I'll need it. Wars cost money. Agendas. I complete missions to increase my influence with the Pope. Advisors. A standard one for manpower, a cheaper one for improving relations, and a cheaper administrative one to reduce stability costs. I also get rid of 2 unnecessary forts. I usually remember them halfway through the game, but this way I deal with the issue right away. I slowly start building 4 heavy ships, which I'll need later. I also recruit mercenaries. I got lucky with a commander who has 3 siege points, so I take him, and I assign the free company to him as well. Yes, I know France has some great generals, actually insanely good generals, and that I need to lead one of them to 4 victorious battles, because that will unlock artillery in 1444. But hey, I can always siege 2 forts at once, right? The fastest moves are done, now let's move on to diplomacy. I revoke France's guarantees for Scotland and immediately break the alliance with Provence. In Provence's place, I ally with Bohemia, Brandenburg, and 2 other electors. The Palatinate, I even arrange royal marriages with these countries. I want to convince 3 to 4 electors to support France, and the sooner the better. My diplomacy will work on 2 fronts. First, securing relations with my own vassals, and second, improving relations with the electors I've allied with. I also use prestige to ensure Orleans' loyalty. And now, the fun begins. On December 12th, I immediately declare war on England. It's not an easy war to win, but it's worth reducing aggressive expansion by reclaiming my own territories, and not waiting for the surrender of main event. The English army landed, which is actually great because they're getting wrecked, and it speeds up the process of taking that fortress. Somehow, I completely wiped out the Portuguese armies. Then I marched my troops into Portugal. Portugal quickly fell into my hands. From them, I mainly take money and war reparations. Besides, I know how dumb the AI is in EU4 right now, so I'll win the war with England without needing war score from Portugal. Then I returned to France and started destroying smaller English armies. I wiped out their entire army. Next, I simply disband all my cavalry. It's very expensive to maintain, and I'm temporarily running a deficit. I also transfer the captured fortresses to my vassals. That way, they pay for their maintenance instead of me. Destroying the English armies allowed me to complete the mission that gives me free artillery. A very important mission that most of you probably forget about. Alright, I usually forget about it. It's the mission to reclaim Gascony, which, if I take it now, makes provinces in that region cost fewer war score points. Now I'll show you how I always get to England. I ask the Scots for military access, and more importantly, permission to dock my fleet in their ports. Then I sail my fleet roughly this way, and I successfully land most of my army without interference from the English Navy. Even if the English Navy blocks you, just move your army to the other side of Scotland and see what happens. Now I saved the Scots from losing their castle. I also just noticed that I got incredibly lucky. England has a new heir. This means England will be weak for a very long time. At this point, England is basically my personal bank. I just need to capture 1 more fortress, since, as you can see, the Scots stole the other one from me. I take everything England has on the continent, yes, including Calais. On the islands, I take Cornwall for myself. I don't capture the fortress because I'll put England into so much debt that they'll most likely delete it themselves. At least I hope so. Plus, I take a ton of money and war reparations. I also didn't try to take Calais because I have slightly different plans for Ireland. After my conquest, I reclaimed about 5% of land, less than I expected. I also finally became worthy of being Austria's rival. It turned out that I will most likely need a 4th ally among the electors, Trier, because they will be the easiest to convince. I also distribute the rest of the privileges, mostly standard ones, and complete a few of my missions. The liberation of Normandy, where I reclaim another crown land and strip Normandy of all its territorial cores, which is great because it means fewer rebels for me. I also complete the mission for which I previously built heavy ships. Thanks to this, I will gain a unique ability to build a port in Calais, which will significantly increase my trade power in the region, plus claims on English territory. Finally, I reclaim land, which leads to a small rebellion. And now, since I have won the war against England and taken care of a few basic matters, you probably thought I would use the acquired money to develop France. Well, not really. Another war is ahead, and it is usually much tougher. Although I temporarily have a technological advantage over Burgundy, they will likely catch up quickly. Burgundy has plenty of forts that I will have to capture, and many subject nations that will fight against me. Besides, Charles is already ruling, so I have to hurry. If he dies too soon, I get nothing. So I declare war on Burgundy because I want them to like me. This is shaping up to be some kind of abusive relationship. The best target is the Burgundian capital. I call my allies for help. Also, do not build a spy network on Burgundy because if you get discovered, your relations with them will deteriorate, and we don't want that. Besides, I wanted this war to last as short as possible. Meanwhile, I got rewarded for ending the 100 Years' War. Well, England got a bit smaller, and I have already gained such an advantage in the war against Burgundy that I can simply force them to break their rivalry with me. Their death will also have a positive effect because after the wars, they will not rebuild their army, be weaker, and be more willing to ally with me because they will fear me. Appreciate that I turned down the volume. Alright, as a consolation, ENEBA, besides the ongoing promotions, and there are quite a few, gave my viewers an additional 10% discount on all purchases. You just need to use the links in my description, and I can always pay off Burgundy's debt. Surprisingly, this war went really smoothly. Now that I've handled the war with Burgundy and we are no longer rivals, I can afford a brief pause in wars, which is actually recommended to reduce aggressive expansion, unless, of course, a Provençal opportunity presents itself. Besides, I also need to take care of my vassals and begin integrating them. It's best to do this before becoming Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Oh no, my heir is dying. How sad. Really, I use influence points to purchase a papal legate, which grants me additional diplomatic reputation and reduces the cost of annexing my vassals, which I will be doing soon. After all these wars, I'm earning quite well, probably partially due to war reparations. It's also worth mentioning that France has very special vassals, known here as appanage. The problem with them is that you can't annex them immediately. Usually, you can do it either when you reclaim crown land, allowing you to annex one vassal per land recovery, or when you have 50% crown land, which lets you annex all of them at once. Look, I can annex and start the process. They also have one very useful option that sometimes comes in handy. It's also related to why I'm not too concerned about the death of my ruler, because Orleans has a pretty decent heir, and I'm now appointing him as the heir to the throne of France. Nice, right? Oh yes, the Provençal opportunity has appeared, and for balance, I immediately got slapped with stability loss. So besides that, I am now starting the process of annexing Orleans because it's my strongest vassal and it's worth getting rid of them. I set the Kingdom of Aragon as my new rival because England is already too weak. Thanks to having a common rival, it will also be easier to improve my relations with Burgundy. Next, I attack Provence under excommunication to take this province. Look, all these provinces are 50% cheaper in aggressive expansion. I'll bring in allies to help so that it's a quick war, since I already have enough forts to besiege. Then, I pass my reform. I'll go for tax income here. Milan succession, who cares? If you're interested, it's an event where you can gain a personal union over Milan. From Provence's allies, I obviously take money, war reparations, and max out my prestige. From Provence itself, I take as much land as I can. Unfortunately, Palatinate occupies part of it, so I make Provence my vassal. By doing it this way, I generate much less aggressive expansion. Lorraine, since it's a personal union under Provence, will simply be released. You cannot inherit a personal union this way. After everything, I return all the provinces I took from Provence back to them, which makes them more loyal. Another cool thing about taking Provence is that my heir now gets a bonus to stats, and I'll have reduced aggressive expansion. A 4, 5, 6 heir? Nice! Though I may have just made my situation with Burgundy a lot worse, like really worse. So I'll pay off their debt, I'll insult the Kingdom of Aragon severely, I'll change my merchant's assignment to improve relations here, which will help aggressive expansion decay faster. And I'll even send Burgundy some money. Honestly, I've done everything I could to improve our relations, so now all that's left is to wait. So now I will finally take care of my vassals. I managed to gain the loyalty of the nobility as well as my vassals. Additionally, the vassals will receive development in their capitals. Next, I need to develop Paris 8 times, and I will do so using diplomatic and military points. I don't know how this happened, but suddenly Burgundy stopped seeing me as a threat. Usually their attitude should change when we reach plus 50 points in relations. I had 40, and out of nowhere, it jumped to 75. But the alliance is secured, and right after that, I take a royal marriage. All these diplomatic actions are costing me a ton of diplomatic points. However, I think it's worth the price, especially now that I have become the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire in 1459. Just a quick note, don't click the button to join the empire right away. Why? You'll find out after the first reform. Okay, so I managed to secure Burgundy as my loyal ally and became the HRE Emperor. Doing this before 1460 opens up a lot of new opportunities. First, I am almost guaranteed to inherit Burgundy during the Burgundian event, even more so because Burgundy's heir has weak claims to the throne. Another important thing is that I will be able to keep the Italian states in the empire, because that idiot would have probably kicked them out. From this moment on, now that Burgundy and the empire are secured, my game as France changes significantly. I practically have doubled manpower and a pretty solid income. So now my next step will be increasing the development level of Provence to 100 and securing my duchies. I lower their independence desire using prestige and development, and once their liberty desire reaches 5%, I complete the mission that reduces the annexation cost of my vassals. More importantly, I will gain a lot of reform points. At the third government tier, this reform would be perfect for me, but remember, we are still in the first tax era, and nothing beats that. I increase taxes by 50% everywhere. Now the economy will thrive. In 1460, we have the usual Shadow Kingdom event, where as emperor, I support the option to keep the Italian states in the empire until 1490. Otherwise, I would lose a massive amount of imperial authority. Of course, not everything went perfectly. The Iberian wedding happened. So now I will have a much stronger Castile to deal with somehow. Once the Shadow Kingdom ends, I have 30 years to convince the Italian states to remain in the empire. To do this, I need to accomplish one of two things. Well, actually, more than two, but two will be enough. The countries that you can see here must either have 150 relations with me, or I must defeat them in a war. Additionally, they can also be my vassal or ally. I'm a bit surprised that Milan is on the list. I already won a war against them, and I also won against Saluzzo, but I guess at that time I wasn't emperor yet. That's probably why. Oh, perfect, my ruler just died. This will allow me to pass the first reform very quickly. And the best part is that as soon as I join the empire, I'll be able to pass another one. Yes, this is exactly why you shouldn't have clicked that button earlier. So now I quickly improve relations with the Italian states. Although from what I see, I don't have to do it with all of them because I have an opportunity. I sold Maine to Provence, which made them big enough to complete their mission, granting them permanent cores on all of Naples, and now I can reclaim those cores for them. Yes, I believe all these provinces belong to France. This war is completely one-sided, so I won't even really participate. To humiliate an Italian state in war, I need to make peace with them for at least one war score point. I'll take a bit more. Once I've improved relations, I also give a small donation to each country. And once I have over 150 relations with them, they disappear from the list. Meanwhile, I also developed the province of Co to level 15 because I completely forgot about face sitting. That sounded so wrong. In the end, through bribery, I managed to prevent the Shadow Kingdom, which increased my imperial authority by 20 points. Right after dealing with the Shadow Kingdom, I finished the war with Naples, returning all provinces to Provence for 16 aggressive expansion points, practically 1/3 of Italy. And now for real, finally and definitively, I will deal with my vassals. Except for Provence, I also expand the port in Calais. After clicking the mission for the Neapolitan throne, I gain territorial claims over the entire Aragon. Unless you're interested in other options, you can let me know in the comments because I'm not sure. But if I had clicked this mission earlier, when Aragon was still independent, I probably would have been able to form a personal union with them. Right after the Shadow Kingdom, another incident can happen, which just triggered for me. The Papal State wants to join the Empire. For this incident to happen, the Pope must have fewer than 10 provinces, and relations with the current Emperor must be at least plus 100. It's kind of funny that I managed to do this without even having an alliance with the Pope. I was about to start another war, but I'm about to pass another reform, so I need to hold off. You can't pass imperial reforms while at war. But even better, I finally start the process of annexing all of my vassals at once. Well, not all of them, because I'm missing one more land reclamation. The Pope joined the Empire, and thanks to that, I passed the third reform. Now, after the third reform, I gained a special casus belli for expanding the Empire's borders. Not in a very diplomatic way, but through war. For my first target, I choose Brittany. Yes, I know I need Brittany for completing French missions. I'll conquer them for more aggressive expansion later. At last, my glorious ruler has ascended the throne. The heir is acceptable. And after a moment, I annex Brittany for 5.5 points of imperial authority. But hey, it's something. Next, I attack England because they started expanding into Ireland and I don't like that. For the first age ability, no surprises here, I choose reduced aggressive expansion. This time, I take London from the English and a province to border Scotland. I release all their Irish holdings and of course conquer London. Money and war reparations are just a bonus. Then I begin the campaign to force Ireland into the Empire. And during this war, Burgundy became my personal union. Through an event, its ruler simply died. It also inherited all its territories in the process. Now, some of you might think that clicking the mission will now give you all of Burgundy for free. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. It was patched sometime late last year because forming the big blue blob was too easy. Oh, and of course I will keep Burgundy in the event. This only leads me into a war with France. I hate myself. Back to the war with Scotland. I have such a numerical advantage and manpower growth that I can easily afford to storm their forts. The Scottish army ceases to exist, and since I'm nearing my monarch points cap, I have to decide which ideas to take. Unfortunately, the event for cheaper ideas didn't trigger for me this time. For what I'm planning, my first idea group will be aristocratic. Unfortunately, through war, only the main war target can be added to the empire, so I sign white peace with the other countries. Except for Scotland, I break it into smaller nations. Adding these Irish states might not give me much imperial authority, but every bit helps speed up the process. Meanwhile, the process of adding the Teutonic Order to the empire has begun. I'll allow it, but under very strict conditions. For my second idea group, I choose influence. I plan to have a lot of vassals in the future. Now comes the hardest part of my plan. I must maintain peace and can't wage wars. I have to wait until I inherit Burgundy for free. I'm after those rich Burgundian territories. As far as I remember, the event to inherit all of Burgundy's land for free can only fire when I'm not at war. The average time for it to happen is around 15 years. But if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. I'll use this forced peace period for a few things. First, improving relations with all members of the Holy Roman Empire. This will save me some imperial authority in the future, even though it's a tedious process. I'll also use this time to develop my economy. I've already built some workshops where they are most profitable, but I'll construct more for all other goods except wine, fish and grain. I must say, at this moment, my imperial authority growth is quite decent. Next, I'll focus on building a lot of churches, practically everywhere. Oh, nice! Irish states have started joining the Holy Roman Empire on their own. I'll also develop all my trade nodes in the English Channel. After all the upgrades, I now control 30% of English trade. So the English Channel will now be my main trade node. Unfortunately, I have to attack Britain earlier than planned because it's blocking me in my missions quite significantly. Another duchy has joined the empire. Meanwhile, I'm continuing along my mission tree, which by the way grants me another cheaper advisor. Very useful. As well as permanently increasing my nation's power projection on the international stage. Now I can choose the future of the empire. No surprises, I will take the path of seizing power in the empire. After all, I'm already the emperor. Now I have one very easy mission ahead of me, which will grant me an additional diplomat and increase my ruler's diplomatic strength. The next two, however, are more challenging, especially the third one, as I need to develop Versailles. The first level is already under construction. Since I'm now focused on my monuments, I took back the Papal Palace from Provence. It turned out that while reclaiming the province, I didn't lose the monuments level. I could kiss that horse, and I definitely would if this event had triggered earlier. And this is the event I've been waiting for. I inherit all of Burgundy for free, I add all its territories to states, and I begin mass construction of courthouses across my country. Annexing Burgundy increased my income by around 50 ducats, which lined up perfectly with passing the 5th imperial reform, and honestly, inheriting Burgundy and passing this reform brings France into the next stage of peacefully expanding the empire's borders. Army up, forts activated, war with Spain for this province. I think my allies will handle Austria since I called them into this war. Meanwhile, I'm marching into Spanish and Aragonese territories. Wow, Spain actually has an army. And you know what? I'll let them take that fortress. I'll even let them step onto my lands, because now I'm pulling back toward the fortress again, bombarding the walls and storming it. Then I attack my opponent's smaller armies. I'd love to show you how I destroy them, but I can't. I was going to use a maneuver to force their retreat, but I ended up completely annihilating them. That fortress wasn't as much of a problem as I thought, so I'm going back to besiege Aragon. Austria has too many vassals for me to release, so next time I'll just have to attack them directly. I've defeated the Spanish fleet, taking a short break to develop my country since I've built up a lot of points. Soon I'll hit the cap, golden era, burger bonus, and I begin upgrading my provinces. Mostly using diplomatic points, prioritizing the high value goods. You all know them well by now. For wine, wool, cattle and grain, I'm using military points first, paired with administrative ones, and I've spent all my points. Back to the war, which is going smoothly so far. Though my allies are struggling against Spain's highly capable army, even I got beaten by Spain a few times. Honestly, I have a problem when it comes to peace with Castile. I can't decide whether to release a bunch of smaller vassals or break their union with Aragon and invade again in a few years. Tough choice. I ultimately decided to end the Iberian Union. Now I'm introducing colonialism near Paris. Pretty good province for it. I also pulled off a trick for a free monument level. Since the Papal Palace is currently upgrading to level 2, I click the mission and boom, free 3rd level. I basically have to be the Pope now, reapplying the higher tax edict everywhere. And now I'm looting all the provinces. Remember, all tax modifiers affect how much money you get from looting. This might be my record. And I haven't even played as China yet. I've conquered some island territories, all to expand the empire. I also reclaimed a province from Venice for Milan. Now everything that should be in the empire is in the empire, so I've completed the Versailles upgrade. I could finish the securing the empire mission, but I'm holding off since it grants my ruler 2 permanent diplomatic points. I'd rather save that for his heir. Austria really got me. I thought they'd call in their ally Castile against me, but for some reason they didn't. It took them a whole year. Now I can attack Castile again in 7 years. As for Austria, I'll shrink them down a bit and put them in debt. I've already gathered 57 imperial authorities after my latest conquests on the islands. The problem is, I want to keep pushing centralization reforms, but they always demand more imperial authority. Also, what's with this modifier about some culture being unacceptable? Still missing 10 points of imperial authority. So I abdicated my great emperor, gained the missing 10 points instantly. Now it's time for 2 more missions. First, Right by Blood, which boosts imperial authority gains for the current emperor's lifetime. Second, a mission that strengthens his diplomatic abilities. And best of all, I'll get another 20 imperial authority points. Just not yet. First, let's enact the reform. Beautiful. For my third idea group, I'm taking economic ideas, mainly for that policy. I've also unlocked a building that increases army size, so I'm spamming it everywhere. So far, the empire has 81 members. The Protestant Reformation has appeared in 1515, a mix of luck and misfortune for me. Lucky because it's right near my borders, unlucky for the same reason. Another piece of luck, it started in a 1 province minor. Unfortunately, this is also the moment when a rebellion breaks out in the Netherlands, so I need to move my capital to Holland. More precisely, to any province in that region. I think it's best to do it in Holland, and as you can see, I moved the capital, which prevented the revolt. Well, that's the end of my luck, because the next countries where Protestantism appeared are much larger and harder to defeat. What's worse, Brandenburg is my ally and an elector, and in Denmark the center of the Reformation did not appear in the capital. But I guess I have to limit my losses, so either way I'm attacking the heretics. And when I take their capital, I enforce a religious conversion. The province converts and the center, best of all, disappears. I managed to add England to the empire. Then I led to a partial partition of the Kingdom of Aragon. I didn't release Sicily for a very simple reason. Provence doesn't add its provinces to the empire, I don't know why, so Sicily wouldn't have joined it anyway. Next I carried out another imperial reform, which is quite significant because it speeds up the process of gaining imperial authority. And then I struck at Spain. As peace terms, I chose to release several smaller states. The age of reformation has begun. Unfortunately, the progress of religious changes in the empire doesn't look great, but it doesn't look terrible either. It will just be even harder for me to push through reforms. A few years later, I enacted a reform that ensures that someone from my country will always be emperor. Its downside is that the papacy always leaves the empire as a result. And I guess the papacy is mad enough about it to appoint an Austrian cardinal as the next pope. The funniest thing, Calvinism has appeared and in the exact same province where Protestantism appeared earlier. Nice. The second center emerged in Scotland. Great. And the moment Scotland actually formed, it left the empire. I don't like this. However, the Reformation came too late to stop the process of bringing all HRE countries under control. I can already enact the last reform that I care about. Only 6 duchies are against it. And honestly, I'm not sure which ones exactly, because even Austria agrees. The only one showing as opposed is England, and I'm already working on that, but I can't figure out who the others are. I checked, and they are Brandenburg, Saxony, Tuscany, and Austria, so I sent a series of diplomats to improve trust with those countries, because that also affects whether they join the empire. A few years later, I'd had enough. I really didn't know what else I could improve. By now, all the countries should be joining the empire, but one still refuses. Brandenburg, but they just supported it a moment ago. So at this moment, my empire looks like this, and I have no idea why Brandenburg isn't joining. If I reload the save, Brandenburg supports unification more than Austria does, and yet they still refuse to join the empire. I don't know why. Right now, I already have almost 1 million troops capped, but I can still improve it. I'll hire the right advisor. I activate this mission that I've been holding on to for this moment because it also increases vassal force limit contribution. Thanks to this, I'm just shy of 1 million. So my next step will be to build additional regiment houses everywhere for all my vassals. And once these buildings are finished, a 1,000,000-man army can theoretically exist before 1550. The only problem is that I have very little manpower. And now Poland has invaded Russia with my help. Basically, Russia is at war with all of Europe. Now my vassals are attacking, and Poland has conquered all of Livonia. 9 years later, I can claim the title of military hegemon, so I do. I must admit, France has a fair bit of army just waiting around now, trying to be useful, but the hegemon and 1 million troops in the field have been achieved. Additionally, I'm still making money, and my army limit has grown to 1.2 million. To create this Roman Caliphate, I needed far fewer troops than 1 million. I highly recommend checking it out.